It had something to do with the rain, leaching loamy dirt, and the way the back lane came alive. Half moon whispered, go away the back. For a while I heard you missing steps in the street, and your anger pleading in an uncertain key, singing the sound that you found for me. When the winter took the tips of my ears.
Hey Manfried fans, thank you for joining me for another live stream. I'm going to be calling my friend Tony Breed in just a second, and we're going to be working on comics. I'm going to be doing a little bit of animation, and we're just going to be catching up and chatting. So yeah, let's give him a call.
Hello.
Hey Tony, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm very good. We are live right now on the air. So thank you for joining me for another Manfried the Man live stream.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, I'm going to put if you want to get your webcam set up, or then I'll throw it up on the screen and then we can start working.
All right, sounds good to me. Let me just adjust my angle a little bit. I said I had it all set up, and I sat down to work, and then I was like, oh, I can't put my arm down anywhere. That's not good.
Yeah, it happens. Also, I don't know if you can hear in the background, Matt is making Nanaimo bars today. So he's busy in the kitchen.
Hi, Tony.
Hi, Matt.
Tony says hi. Matt says hello.
I'm ready. All right. I have to decide what to do first.
So what are you working on today, Tony?
I am working on some commissions that are well overdue from last year's Kickstarter. I don't have anything remotely like a good excuse for being so late. But that's how it is sometimes.
Life just gets in the way sometimes, right?
Life absolutely gets in the way.
I totally feel you. So today I'm working on a little animation of Manfried saying hey. So that's what everyone's going to be able to see.
How do you do your animations?
I'm doing them in Flash.
Okay.
Or Animate, as it's now called.
Oh, fancy! It's got a new name.
Yeah.
I've never really used that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like much of an animator, so my stuff's usually pretty limited. But it's fun to just like play around and experiment, do different things.
I've seen some like people will do animations and they'll say, "Oh, I worked on this thing," and it's like someone walking or something jumping or yawning, and I'm always like, "That's amazing!" Because there's, the more people talk about how to do animation, the more impressed and intimidated I am.
Yeah, I mean, I work at an animation studio, so literally everyone who works there is a better animator than me. I have absolutely.
And it's an opportunity to learn.
Yeah, I have absolutely no like grandiose ideas about my own abilities.
So when I do my the commissions, what I did is I said you can pick a scenario for one of my characters, because when I draw, people have me draw them. Like, some people are easy to draw and some people are really hard to draw, and I feel like I can spend hours and hours trying to figure out what someone's face looks like.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. But I say, just tell me what to draw with my characters, and then they do.
Right. So instead of doing a commission of somebody's partner or something like that.
Exactly. I do I do a face that I know well, except this one's a character that I haven't drawn for like a year.
Is this giving you a good excuse to just sit down and do some work?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, I needed to do this. I needed to like get it together and draw.
Yeah. Yeah, I always, I'm at the stage now where, like, I always need an excuse to, like, sit down and do work. So these live streams are like, oh, well, you know, I promised that I was going to do it. So I better follow through. Even if I'm particularly lazy.
So thank you.
And,
I don't know what's wrong with me. It's been really hard for me to just focus and get anything done.
Yeah. I feel like even though we've like finished working on the books, I still feel like that I always just have so much work to do, and I'm in that phase now where I'm just like procrastinating like hell.
Yeah, nothing quite like a deadline.
Yeah, I have a lot of work to do, but it's all kind of like vague stuff, and yeah, no deadlines. It's kind of just like, yeah, like I should be doing this, I should be like making these animations, but like, you know, there's no real incentive other than like likes, I guess, or Instagram likes.
I think these commissions, you know, when you put together a Kickstarter, you say when you're going to get them done, and I think that I probably said that they were going to get done like last September. So
yeah, because when you're putting the Kickstarter stuff together, you're so like you tend to overestimate, or you underestimate how much work there is to do, and you overestimate like how quickly you can get through everything.
You overestimate how much energy you're going to have to actually work on things.
Yeah.
I also I had a very unproductive year last year. I changed the way that I was doing the comic, and I thought that was going to fire me up, and I was going to get excited and do more work, and that didn't really happen that way.
Yeah.
I still, you know, I'm happy I made the change and all that, but I have some cameos to do, and I just didn't put out enough pages to get all the cameos done.
Right. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your comic for people who are listening and unfamiliar?
Absolutely. So my comic is about a group of friends. It's a largely queer, but not entirely group of friends, and they just sort of, I would like to describe it as life is what happens when you don't know what you're doing. Which I think is a good description of life. Definitely. I don't like how this is framed. I wish my table didn't squeak every time I moved. So it's so it used to be done in this newspaper style, where it'd be 3 panels, and everything would. I'd do these arcs, these story arcs that would take like 6 or 7 3-panel strips to tell, and that was it. And then I decided to do more long format stuff and do an actual, like, basically serialize a bunch of mini comics, and it's really very different because, I mean, I spent a year working with a single story,
Right.
And that's a totally different rhythm, you know. You
Definitely.
come up with an idea, and then you just have to live with it for a year.
Yeah. Or
And
unlike
at the end
me.
of it, I hated it. I really hated it, and I was like, well, it's done. Maybe I won't make the book. And then a bunch of people, like friends and fans, were like, oh, the story was really great, and I'm so glad you did it. And I was like, oh, okay, good. I'm glad that I cannot trust my own judgment about my stuff.
Yeah. I'm at the stage now with the second Manfried book where like it's done and it's coming out in May, but like nobody has read it yet, so I haven't got any feedback for it, and I'm at that stage now where I'm just like, it's the worst thing that's ever been made. Everyone's gonna hate it, like blah blah blah. And so like, and I had exactly the same feeling with the last book where it was like after we finished it and before it came out, I just started to like doubt myself so much, like. I guess because I had spent so much time with it, but nobody else had read it, and I was like, is everybody gonna get it? Are they gonna like it? Like, is it good? I don't know.
There's that thing about how I want to say this is on This American Life, where whenever you create something, you are comparing it against what you were trying to do.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
other people only see what you did, so in a way, they're more honest because they're
Yeah,
not comparing it against something
that will never exist, right?
that will never exist.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. And I went through so many drafts of the script. Like, I was like rewriting the script as it was being drawn. It was a mess.
That's the thing about serializing is that I would there were a couple things I did where I had a really strong response from readers, and then I was like, oh, okay, wait, no, I think they've got a point here, and I need to address that, and so I kept tweaking what I was saying in response to what people were writing.
Right. Yeah, that must be interesting because I feel like when I was writing the second Manfried book, I had started writing it before the first book came out and people read it basically, and so I was kind of just sort of kept the ball rolling from the first book. But once the first book came out and I started getting reviews and like feedback from people, I was like, oh, okay, there are things in this book that people like that I hadn't put in the second book, so I kind of started to rejig it so that I was including more of the stuff that people were responding to. And I think that's
Which I
why,
think is totally fair.
yeah, that's why I went through so many rewrites, because I got about halfway through the script and the first book came out and people were like, I really like this, I really like that. And I was like, oh God, I better put that in the second book too. I gotta give the people what they want.
Right. Well, it's I don't feel like it's pandering or anything. Like if someone says, "Oh, I really liked it when this happened," it doesn't. Not that you suggested you were pandering, but when people say, "Oh, I should have," sometimes people are like, "Oh, I'm just gonna do to tell the story that I want to tell, or tell it in the way that I want to tell," and that's great. But also, I do like to give people what they want.
Yeah, yeah.
And also, because a lot of times I'm getting sort of topical, or a lot of it, what I'm writing about has to do with feelings.
Right.
And if people get it, then I'm like, okay, that's good, that people got what I was trying to get. And then if they don't get it, I'm like, oh, okay, I need to
like, yeah, just like rethink it or whatever.
exactly. I also, as it sort of really as a device to get the story started, I had one of my characters just sort of acting bizarre and hostile. And then as I was coming to the close of the book, I was like, that was actually kind of uncharacteristic, and I should probably address the fact that he was bizarre and hostile. So I rewrote the last scene to have him come in and apologize for being bizarre and hostile.
Right. So can people buy your book online?
People can buy the book online at megahugspress.storeenvy.com,
Okay.
or you can go to muddlersbeat.com and look for the store link.
Okay. I put your personal website link in the video description, so if they're, I'm sure they can find it from there too.
Cool. Oh, actually, don't put that one up.
Oh.
I'm just looking at it. You know, put the Muddler's Beat link up.
Okay. I'll change it.
That one, yes, I was interviewed and they put that link in there, and I was like, oh, I haven't updated this in like 6 years.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I was like, oh, I need to update this, and then it just made me sad. So
my personal website is the same. I haven't updated it in literal years.
Yeah, this one specifically, it starts with me with saying like that. I think it says I live with my husband and 2 cats. It's like, well, everybody's dead but me.
Oh no.
That was unfortunate.
Oh no, yeah, that's gonna pull the heartstrings.
And also, I was like out of town when I first saw it, and I was like, I think I can do this on my phone, and I was trying to download apps on my phone to edit HTML, and then I was like, or I could just ignore it.
Yeah. I had to make a new website for Manfried because I have like a domain name, but it had been pointing for the longest time at the Manfried Tumblr page, which is kind of where I just threw everything to just sort of keep it all in one place. But then Tumblr started doing that thing where they were, you know, cracking down on
flagging things as porn.
Yeah, flagging everything as porn. And so
everything is porn. Yeah, I know a bunch of people just stopped using, who weren't doing porn on Tumblr, just gave up. They just stopped posting.
Yeah. So what happened is that both Facebook and Instagram, I got sent messages from them saying something like the website link that you have like on your profile is pointing to like an inappropriate website, because I think Tumblr had flagged the Manfried blog as porn, like just the whole blog. So it was coming up on various other websites as being like linking to a porn site.
Oh god.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, this is bad. So I had to like really quickly like throw together a WordPress site for Manfried that just like has all the basic information on there, just so that I wasn't like, Facebook wasn't telling people that they were going to a porn site if they're like clicking on my website link.
So I actually had this problem at my old job a while back. Implemented a content filter for browsing. And, I mean, I may still have this problem at my current job, but I think people are maybe a little more savvy about what gets flagged. But I went to go to the old comics, Finn and Charlie Are Hitched, and it was, and I got this big warning on the screen at my office that said, inappropriate content, pornography.
Oh, no.
And I was like, if my coworkers Google me and they see that, oh, he makes a comic, I didn't know that, and then they'll click on it and they'll say pornography, and like, oh my god, Tony makes porn, we didn't know. Mm-hmm. And it was just, I think it was because the description of the comic said that it was gay. Like, I don't think it was anything more than that.
Yeah, for some content filters, like, that's enough. They're like, oh, it must be porn then. And I think that's what happened with a lot of Tumblr blogs. Just like literally anything or everything and anything got flagged as not safe for work.
Apparently the algorithm thing that they used is known to be really bad. Like, it just doesn't work.
Right.
But it's also the only one they have, and so they went with it. It's weird when I go to Tumblr now because no one's there. Right,
yeah, it's like a ghost town. Yeah, and I noticed almost immediately, basically what would happen is that I would post something to the Manfried blog, like whether I was reposting like a link or a comic or something like that, and most days it would get a couple of hundred of like notes, like it would get people liking it and retweeting it, reblogging it, or whatever. At the day that Tumblr announced that they were going to start flagging inappropriate content or whatever, I like reblogged a comic and it got like 20 notes. Like people just left immediately.
Yeah.
It was a complete exodus.
What a disaster for them, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know if somebody was just like, I'm sick of this and I'm just gonna like let it self-destruct, or what their imperative was for doing that.
So my understanding is that it has to do with the U.S. laws known as SESTA and FOSTA, and I don't remember what they stand for. But the idea was to make it harder for sex traffickers.
Right.
By making it so one of the sort of principles, the legal principles of what was at the time called Web 2.0 was that you'd be as a website owner, you weren't responsible for what other people posted on your website, because if you were, like if Google were, or YouTube were responsible every time someone posted a video using music that they didn't own, then it would be impossible for them to let people post videos.
Yeah.
So that was what was going on, and then this law kind of changed that particular principle and said, if someone is advertising sexual services, then the website owner is liable regardless of whether or not they know that it's happening.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And so what this has the idea was to prevent sex trafficking, but it's just driven everything underground. That's kind of what's happening.
Yeah, it's the same thing with like if you make it illegal, then it just means that more criminals are going to profit off it instead of being able to regulate it or keep an eye on it.
Yeah. And all the people who are, who were sex workers who are doing it by choice, who used to have these various websites that they could work with that would make it safer for them to do this kind of work, and then also it was sort of out in the open. Right. Suddenly everything has to go underground. It's less safe for them, and then of course that's the case where these like sex traffic brothels thrive in, because it's harder to, so anyway, it's like the effect is completely the opposite. But that is what I've heard, is that's what happened with Tumblr, that Verizon bought it and they were like, this is a risk that we can't assume, and I guess they thought it was more important to basically torpedo the whole thing rather than trying to
well, like, why would they even bother buying it then?
They probably didn't know that was going to happen. Maybe someone thought it was going to work. I don't know. I didn't know that it was, not that I'm a prognosticator of any sort, like, not that I should have known, but I didn't predict that it was going to fail so spectacularly. I was like, oh, people are going to leave, but I didn't realize that so many blogs would be flagged as porn that weren't porn.
Yeah, I think like it probably could have gone better if they had put a little bit more thought and effort into the flagging. Like if they had just hired a couple of people to manually go and flag what was considered inappropriate instead of using what is very obviously a dodgy algorithm, they probably could have survived.
Yeah, except that there's so much content and there's so much of it that they can't, it's really hard to keep up with. I mean, that's ultimately the reason that Web 2.0 law about responsibility was created, was because it was policing it all was just too much.
Right. Well, in any case, Tumblr is dead.
R.I.P. Tumblr. We hardly knew you.
Yeah, I was actually wondering when it was all going down. I was like, I wonder if people are just going to go back to DeviantArt. Maybe I should start posting Manfried on DeviantArt. See what happens.
I have this habit of like getting in on things that I'm not interested in. I end up like begrudgingly getting into them just as they're dying. So that was my story on getting on DeviantArt and LiveJournal.
Oh, right. Yeah, I kind of missed the boat on LiveJournal too. But I did have a DeviantArt account like back in the heyday of DeviantArt. It was fun.
I just
Those carefree
by the
days.
time I had DeviantArt, like I also had Tumblr and I had a bunch of other things, and it was like, let me cross-post everything I draw to like a million different places.
Yeah. I guess people just kind of. I noticed most people flocked to Instagram after Tumblr had died because.
Yeah.
I think I posted on the Manfried Tumblr, like right around the beginnings of it, saying like, like this blog is definitely 100% going to get flagged because there's so many penises. So, if you want to follow me somewhere else, you can follow me on Instagram and I'll post everything there instead. And I got a lot of Instagram followers in those first few days.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people were doing things like that. I had actually stopped posting to Tumblr a while back. Like I didn't feel like I was getting enough traffic. I felt like Tumblr gave me cred. Like people had heard of me.
Right.
But no one who found things on Tumblr ever spent any money. So,
right.
like, I could post something that would say like, "Hey, I'm having a sale on my books," and I would post that to Tumblr, and I would get like 500 reblogs and no sales.
Yeah, it's all like teenagers who have no money.
Yeah, but they're super supportive.
Yes. That's right.
Someday they'll be adults and have money. Now they are adults. Those teenagers are adults now, and they don't need Tumblr anymore.
Yeah.
Something not right about these legs.
So, are you reading any comics at the moment, Tony?
No. I haven't. There hasn't been anything I've been reading, but I've been reading a bunch of books.
Yeah.
I've been cleaning my house. I've been hit in the same craze that everyone else is about getting rid of things. Now, I know you and Matt like moved from Australia. Is it like 4 years ago now?
5 years, actually. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, 5 years.
But like you didn't carry that much stuff, right?
No.
Like I've been living in the same house for 15 years.
Oh, wow.
I know, that's nutty. I'm a little bit surprised that that's my life. And I have so much stuff.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of books that Eric, who is my husband, bought, and that I had never read. So I was really trying to kind of actually read, just throw things out or read them. Well, not throw them out. I donated them to a literacy organization in Chicago called Open Books.
Oh, nice.
And so it felt really good to get rid of all the stuff, but then also everything that I saved, I was like, I saved this for a reason, and now I should actually do what I intended with this, which is to read it. So a bunch of what I saved were just mysteries. So I just went to Florida, and there's a guy who writes like detective fiction and mysteries all set in Florida.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm reading one of those. It's called Striptease, and I didn't realize this, but a friend of mine from Florida pointed out it was made into a movie starring Demi Moore.
Oh. So it's quite old, is it?
Yes. One of the funny things about reading old mysteries is there's always like major plot points that would be solved with the addition of a cell phone.
Right? It's also like watching old sitcoms, and you're like, none of this would ever happen now because everybody has a smartphone.
Yeah. All these things that we deal with, like um, not knowing who people are because we can't just look them up online, or we couldn't just look them up online.
Right.
Not knowing how to find people when you're meeting them out, or like people show up late because whatever, and then you just have to. We used to just wait for people, Caitlin. We used to just sit around and wait.
Because like now it's like if somebody is late to an agreed meeting, you just assume, and like you can't get a hold of them on their phone. Like within 10 minutes, you're like, well, they're obviously dead.
Or you're like, the phone's dead, or like you go through all these scenarios. Whereas it used to be just you'd be like, I don't know. I guess they're flaky.
Yeah, they're probably just running late. There's traffic or whatever. But now, like, my immediate thought is like, oh, they're probably dead in a ditch somewhere. If they're not here 10 minutes after the agreed meeting time, and I can't get a hold of them on their phone.
I remember, like, I think I only did this once, but I was, like, going to meet someone, and I was running late, and then the traffic was terrible, and I, like, pulled over and ran to a payphone and called information to get the phone number for the restaurant, so I could call the restaurant and tell them to find this woman and tell her that I was going to be 20 minutes late.
That's amazing.
Like, how did we even live?
I couldn't even imagine now. And there's just like so much planning that's involved in just letting somebody know that you're going to be late. That's great. Yeah, I read a novel. I finished reading a novel just recently called The City in the Middle of the Night. It's like a sci-fi novel by this author, Charlie Jane Anders.
Okay.
And I had read a book, I'd read her last book that she released, called All the Birds in the Sky, and I really, really loved it. Just like read the entire thing in one day. It was like crack. And this book, it was also very good, but I was so furious when I got to the end because the book didn't end. It just kind of stopped. And I was like, it's like, imagine if you were watching like a Netflix show that's designed to be binge worthy, but they just give you like 2 episodes and then you don't even know if there's going to be more.
That's what the book of Stuart Little is like.
Oh, really?
Like, as a kid, yeah, I loved the book, but also it just like what it reads as is, was it E.B. Wright whoever wrote it? Like, it's like he just kind of got tired and was like, and then Stuart drove off into the sunset, and that's it just cuts off.
Oh dear.
I think it's a tribute to the strength of the rest of the book that it's like a classic of children's literature,
right?
Without having a proper end.
Yeah, and like I kind of suspected that this would happen because as I was like reading the book, I could see, because I was using like an e-reader, I didn't have like a physical copy of the book, but I could see the little progress bar getting closer and closer to the end, and I was like, there's no way this book is going to be able to wrap up all of its plot points in time. There's like 10 pages left. And yeah, I was very frustrated.
I read a book that was full of cliffhangers, and I got to the part where I was like, I can't stop reading this. I need to know what happened. And then the whole book ended on the cliffhanger, and he's like, come back and read the sequel. And he's like, fuck you, no I won't.
I refuse.
God damn it.
God damn it.
Look what you did to me. See how tense and sweaty I am.
Yeah, and there wasn't like at the end of this book, there wasn't even like a will be continued in like the next book. It just ended, and I was like, are you kidding me? What the hell?
That's worse.
Yeah. There wasn't even an indication that there would be a second book. And like, I'm sure that if I followed the author on Twitter or, you know, had done any sort of follow-up research, I probably would have found that a second book has been announced, but I'm way too lazy for that. So now I'm going to live my life in suspense until I find out maybe 2 or 3 years down the line that they released like 5 books.
Also, you're like mad, you know, you get to the end and you're like, you did what?
And if I find out that is actually just the end of the book, I'm going to be so furious. I'm gonna be like, it didn't even end, it just stopped.
I can't imagine. I used to want to write books when I was a kid. That was, and like when I was in college. I can't even imagine. Not that it's not less work than drawing a whole book, but let's not get into that.
Yeah. Yeah, I always think like it's always a thing where it's like maybe you know, one day if I retire I'll try and write a novel, but right now it just seems like so much effort.
I took a writing class in college. I'd taken writing classes before, and I really wanted to write, and I took a writing class in college, and my professor was a bad man.
Oh, no.
And his general attitude towards most of his students, except for the ones that he particularly liked, was what he sort of taught us is writing is a lot of work, and specifically you are just not up to it.
Oh, God.
And I didn't write again after that class.
Really?
Yeah.
He just like killed it in you.
He killed it in me. And yeah. And I didn't try to write I didn't start making comics until I was in my 30s, and it's partly because of that. It's partly because this bastard.
What a huge jerk.
Yeah. Well, if you
can't
can't shape the future of modern literature by writing the great American novel, at least you can have some control over who does it.
Right? Yeah. I remember taking like some creative writing classes when I was in university, and most of them were just complete wankery. And I remember specifically that like one of the lectures that I went to, the professor just kept going on about how great Cormac McCarthy's books are. And he was talking about Blood Meridian, and so I was like, wow, this book must be great. Like, this professor just could not stop talking about how great this book was. And I was like, immediately, as soon as the lecture ended, I went out and bought it, and I started reading it, and I was so fucking furious because that book is trash, and I hated it. And I was so mad that at one point I just like chucked the book across the room. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Anyway, Matt ended up reading it, and he really liked it, but God, I hated it so much.
I'm not familiar with Cormac McCarthy.
It's a lot of like just really bloated prose and nothing happens. Like, if you want a book where a thing happens, don't read Cormac McCarthy, because literally nothing happened. It was like I got halfway through the book and I don't even know if like anything had happened. It was just like a lot of descriptions of landscapes. Ugh, I hated it. Anyway, I'm probably like, you know, like I'm not exactly a literary
heavy
professor reader. Or maybe I'm just too dull to appreciate its importance in the literary canon or whatever.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's all, I don't know, like I think that we should all be able to appreciate everything. Like, it's not, you shouldn't have to be a special person to read a book.
Yeah.
But
and
hey,
I
here I am. I like comics. I like narrative styles. I like storytelling, and I feel very much like, does whatever I'm doing, does this serve the story? Does it make sense? Does it, those are the questions. Does it read on the page? Like,
Yeah.
you might make a really good illustration, but if it's too dense and it doesn't clarify the action on the page, then it's not serving the story.
Yeah.
I have opinions.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people get turned off on reading in general just because of the way that our education system sort of puts so much importance on like literary classics that it's like yeah, okay, I get that like it's good to have an understanding of literary classics so that when you're reading contemporary writing or you're writing contemporary writing, you can reference like things that have come before. But like when you're trying to get like 13-year-olds to read like some fucking dry Russian like 19th century author talking about poverty, it's like you're never going to get people to read books if that's like what they think it is.
Yeah, let's start by trying to get people to love reading, and then get them hooked, and then throw them at the complicated stuff.
Yeah.
I've read, there's a Portuguese author named José Saramago, and I've read a couple of his books, and they're the most difficult things I've ever read in my life.
Oh, really?
They are rewarding, but my God, he'll have paragraphs that are 3 pages long, and he'll have sentences that are a page and a half long, and it's just... like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why would you do this to me? What have I done to you?
I also haven't read many comics lately. I haven't read much of anything lately, actually. I did read that one novel, but it's been a while since I've like really sat down and just like read a book.
What was the last really good thing you read? How about that?
The last really good thing I read. Let me...
The thing where you wanted to get up and immediately tell everyone that they should read it.
Like the author that I was just talking about, Charlie Jane Anders, her first book, which I read probably last year, was I read the entire thing in one night because I was so enraptured by it, and then I read it again like at a sort of slower pace so that I could really get it, like get the full like feeling of it without sort of like just powering through it, and it was really, really good. It's called All the Birds in the Sky, and it's this story about like this girl who has kind of like magical powers and this kid who's like a boy genius, and it's also kind of about the apocalypse. But it's just got like such a cool combination of like sci-fi and fantasy, and also just set in like a kind of modern real world setting. Really, really liked it.
That's always nice when it feels sort of relatable.
Yeah. It had like everything that I like to read about in it.
That's that sounds like what I like about the Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency books.
Oh my God, I love those books so much.
Yeah. Because it's it's got weird sci-fi elements, but at the same time everything is it's like familiar, and the spaces are really...
how many different adaptations of that have you seen now? Because I know that of at least 3 different adaptations, only one of which I consider to be any good.
The only one I know is the recent BBC TV series, which is
the short one, right? The like 4-part one. Or the one?
No, it's not actually. It's not an adaptation of the books at all. It's it's new, based on the same character, or based on the Dirk Gently character. and it creates a whole mythos around Dirk Gently that's not there in the books.
Right.
And so, like, if you want to be a purist, it's like, hey, this is going outside. But I do think that Douglas Adams was involved in it at some point,
Right.
and he contradicted himself in his own book enough that I feel like you can't. Well, I mean, you can, but it doesn't do to be a purist around his work, because he wasn't a purist. So why bother being like, oh, well, this has to be like this.
It has to be like this.
Yeah. And I really love that BBC series. Like, I couldn't watch it fast enough.
It's that. So you're not talking about the Elijah Wood one. It's the one with kind of.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Did you hate it?
I hated it. Yeah.
It's all right. You don't have to like the same thing.
I know. I think.
What do you hate about it?
Well, okay. So to be fair, I only watched about half of the first episode, and it was like weirdly gory, and not that I hate Elijah Wood. He's great. I didn't like the other British guy in it. Is he the guy that played Dirk Gently?
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't.
Yeah, he wasn't. He wasn't what I would have. He wasn't how I envisioned Dirk Gently. Yeah. Certainly. What I think is that when you get through it, ultimately, it's very much in the spirit of the books, because when you finally have revealed to you the complicated plot machinations that culminate in what happens in the first episode, it's so Byzantine and bizarre and complicated that it like that's what the books were like. You'd be like, oh yeah, so anyway, there's this robotic monk from another planet, and he doesn't know what to do, so he kills someone because that's what you do. Yeah, and then there's this professor who can travel in time.
There was this other British adaptation of it, which came out a few years before the Elijah Wood one. And I'm assuming it was probably BBC, because it's always BBC if it's British. But it had, I don't know the actor's name, but he's like this kind of tall guy with curly hair, and he played Dirk Gently. And it was only 4 episodes. It was like a kind of mini series, and each episode was about an hour long. And again, it wasn't it didn't adapt to the book like sort of word for word. Like, it wasn't even really the same story as the book, but it like had a lot of the same themes as the book. And the last episode of that miniseries is probably like, I mean, I haven't watched it in a while, but I remember watching it and being like, that is the most perfect adaptation of Dirk Gently that I ever could have imagined exists.
Well, now I have to watch that.
Yeah, I really loved it. And I know that there's also a comic book that's coming out right now, and I tried to read that, but I also wasn't a huge fan of it. Sorry, guys. It's just one of those things that, like, I think it imprinted on me a little bit too much when I first read it. So now any adaptation is kind of like, yeah, it's all right, I guess, but it's not exactly what I was imagining.
Right. Yeah, I think I was sort of curious about it, but I was also like, I don't need your adaptation, because I've got my memories of the book.
Yeah.
Which is how I usually feel about these things.
I also, I think it was last year, or maybe the year before, I went to a summer cabin with some friends of mine from Toronto. We spent about a week just out in the wilderness, having barbecues and whatnot, going on hikes. Nice. And one of my friends was reading this book, and she looked like she was having a great time reading it. Like, she was constantly like, every day she'd be like sitting on the couch, and she'd be like, seemed like she was getting through it really quickly. And so I took note of like the name of the book, and I was like, oh, Emma seemed to be enjoying this book. Maybe I would also like it. And it was about like a modern day witch and whatnot. And um I ended up buying it a few weeks later and reading it, and it was so bad that I was like, I kind of lost respect for her a little bit, and I messaged her. I got about halfway through the book before I just couldn't bear it any longer, and then I messaged her and I was like, I started reading that witch book that you were reading at the cabin, and it was really bad. I was like, what's up with that? And she was like, oh, I know, it was terrible. Like I really hated it. And I was like, but you looked like you were having such a good time reading this book.
Why didn't you stop reading it? I don't understand.
I don't know. I think it's because she reads a lot and she reads very fast. So like I think she probably just had more patience to sit there and read through the whole thing than I obviously do. I was like, I feel like betrayed by this book. I thought it was going to be so good.
One of my friends, I have this series of like real guy pinups that I've been doing, and I had a friend pose for me, and then he said something along the lines of recently about how he assumed I was just doing that to throw him a bone, like make him feel better about himself or something. Right. That I had him pose for me, and I was like, no, do you know how long it takes me to paint someone? Like, I wouldn't do that to be nice. I did this because you're good looking and it was a business decision, okay? That made me think about, that was just made me thinking about like someone who reads books so quickly that they can be like, well, this book is terrible, but I'll finish it.
Yeah, I'll get through it. And like, honestly, I used to be able to read books like that. When I was a teenager, I would read anything and everything that came across my path. But it seems like now, like, I just don't have the time or patience to read things that I feel like aren't going to entertain me enough, or that I'm not enjoying. I'm like, life's too short to read a book that you don't like.
I've been, it's been hard for me to get back in a rhythm of reading at all. Like, it sounds very, I don't know, trite to complain about how much work it is to, like how my phone has rewired my brain or whatever. Like, right. Everyone complains about that, but it really feels true.
Yeah, I feel like I have less of an attention span than I used to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I do genuinely miss the feeling of when you find something that you really super enjoy and you just like sit down all day and you just read it, the whole thing in one go. It's such a good feeling. It's also like the feeling that I get when I find a movie that I really like and I wasn't expecting it. Just that feeling of joy that you get from having like watched something or read something that really resonates
just
with you.
Sucks you in.
Yeah, just totally sucks you in. And then you get that feeling like, am I ever going to feel this again with something new?
I read a book, so I did all this cleaning and I had all of these books and I was also starting a new job. And I said, when I have my new job and I'm going to be on the train every morning commuting to work, I'll start reading these books. And I picked the book that I was going to read first, and it's a book called Hero. It's about a boy who's he's a teenage boy, and he can't tell his father. He's got a secret that he can't tell his father, which is that he has superpowers.
Right.
And also is gay. So it's this very explicit like take on the whole like hiding the fact that you have superpowers and hiding the fact that you're gay and,
right.
and all that stuff. And it was like sort of corny and goofy at a lot of points,
mm-hmm.
but it was also really good. And so I started the job on Monday, and then on by the time Friday rolled around, I was like 2/3 of the way through the book, And then I was in bed and I was like, I was going to bed. I was going to bed early because I'd been sick. I was like, oh, I'll get a lot of extra sleep now. But first, why don't I finish the chapter that I was reading?
Yeah.
I stayed up 3 more hours. I stayed up till 2:30 in the morning, and I finished the whole book.
Yeah, that's a pretty
And
classic
despite
move.
the fact that I was tired, it felt so good to have just loved something that much.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I mean. That's the feeling that I always feel like I'm chasing whenever I start something new, which is it's kind of like, and not everything is going to live up to that expectation of like, oh, is it going to change my life? Is it going to be the best thing I've ever read? But also like you can't help but hope for it.
Yeah. That's why when you find an author you're like, I'm just going to read everything they ever wrote because this was good.
Yeah. How's your
I think
commission?
I keep moving my artwork out of
Right.
the frame.
It
Like,
looks,
whoops!
it's looking
No
really
one can see what I'm doing.
it's looking really cute so far. You've gotten so
Yeah.
far with it too. You're already up to
Oh, this is a different one
Oh, okay. Okay.
because I was letting the ink dry on that one, and I had this one that I'd started last week, and I had done everything but the background colors in the watercolor.
Right.
So I thought, well, once I because the ink of the pens will run if I get water on it, so
That's
I have
right,
to let
yeah.
them really dry before I start. Watercolors do you ever do watercolors?
I haven't for a while, but I used to use watercolors a lot.
I feel like they're good for my brain because you have to stop. At a certain point, like, you can't fix things. You're just going to make it worse. So you just have to stop. And not everything's going to be perfect, and it's a good medium for that. It's also interesting because the like the physics of how the paper absorbs the water and how the pigment moves through the water, you really feel that as you're doing it, and it's like you're kind of guiding the art into happening as opposed to making it happen the same way you do with other media.
Yeah.
That's my feeling on it.
I really like painting with paints. I just I don't know, yeah, I just haven't done it for a while because I've been concentrating on like writing, I guess. But
Yeah, and when you're putting out a book, it's like doing the whole thing in on paper even, just not using a computer. It's like adds to it, and doing the whole thing with paint would be just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, Kelly drew all of the inks. Like she drew all of that on paper. She doesn't use a computer at all.
I mean, actually, neither do I, but I'm still impressed by other people who do it because I feel like I'm the only person.
Yeah, and
but I'm not. It's me and Kelly.
It's you and Kelly. Yeah, don't worry. There are still some holdouts. But yeah, like I colored it all digitally because I would never have been able to color the whole thing on paper.
So, you know about how like in the early days of comic books and the old, how they used to color. There were these old Russian women, and they would I don't know why they were old Russian women, but apparently they were old Russian women, and they would have these giant sheets of Zipotone, and they would know that like they would have this all in their heads that like this sort of flesh tone is like 10% yellow and 20% red or 20% magenta, and they would like have the 4 things, and then they'd be like, okay, so all these faces are going to have 10% yellow, and they would cut the 10% Zipotone out and put them on the yellow layer, and then they would have, okay, the magenta is going to be this, and they'd cut it out. And so coloring then was a completely different skill from what it is now.
That's so cool. Yeah, and I love I mean, like Matt and I went to Japan over Christmas uh, not this Christmas that just passed, but the one before. And
Mm-hmm.
going into those stationery stores over there where they sell all of the like manga supplies, like pens and ink and screen tones and everything. And like I bought so much of that stuff that I will probably never use just because it's so fascinating the way that they put screen tone down, how they like physically cut it out and like paste it onto the page.
I bought some screen tones when I was like in high school or something, and I was like, oh my god! And I never used it because I was hoarding it because I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
If I use it, then I won't have it anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Plus, I didn't want to buy like tons of Zipatone, so I bought like one gradient, which was not really
Right. You can't really
the way to go.
I didn't
I
even
might
know.
even still have it in the basement, you know.
That's amazing. You should totally like make just like a mini comic or something with it. Yeah, I didn't even know that they had like different colored screen tones. I mean, it makes sense when you say it, but I never would even imagined that that's how it was made.
Well, the screen tones would be all the same color. Like they would all be black, but they would have one. They would have 4 copies of the line work, and one would be the black,
Oh, I
and
see.
one would be blue, and magenta, cyan, and yellow, and then they would put the Zipatone on it, and then they would shoot those, and then they would print. This one is the one that gets printed in yellow, and this one gets printed in...
Right. That's so cool.
It's just so interesting that there's this whole art to it that's totally... just doesn't exist anymore. It's like
yeah.
that's not even remotely how it works anymore. And I think it's really changed the way that the style of art is. You know, what people like to do, what they consider appropriate, or you know, what, like now the for those, you know, for Marvel and those same places, the colorists come over and they color over the lines. They're like, okay, this black is now going to be red, and this is going to be this color, and we're going to fill this in this way, and I'm going to put all these lows and highlights and things. And it's like a radically different style. And I stopped reading mainstream comics in college because there wasn't a comic book store near me.
Right.
So I just like, that was before that change happened. And so when I look at what's being done now and all that, I'm like, man, this is so weird.
Yeah, it's weird to think, like, I probably don't even read that many comics generally that are colored, even though I make a comic that's in full color. Like, most of the comics that I read are probably manga. And, like, they don't, it's all black and white.
Yeah. I think the last great book that I read was Emil Ferris's My Favorite Thing is Monsters.
Oh, yeah?
And that's in full color, but I think it's just drawn in full color, the whole thing.
That's crazy.
And it's just shots of her full color renderings of the pages. I do my own coloring. I used to do black and white, and I'm just, again, an idiot. As I got faster, I just made things harder for myself. It's like, oh, hey, I can produce a page in this much time. Let's add an hour of coloring onto the end of everything. I part of the storyline that I just finished, part of what was going on with it was that I just wanted to change one of my character's hairstyles that he'd had for like 10 years because it was annoying to draw. And I've made something that's just as annoying to draw.
Okay, I got a little Manfried animation going now.
Or it's not as annoying to draw, it's more work to color, really.
Right, yeah.
Like, well, good job, Tony. Good show.
Yeah, I got so like fast at coloring in the Manfried comics by the end because we had like such crazy deadlines. I have like my whole workflow down pat.
I had a friend who showed me how to make. I use Photoshop for my coloring, and he showed me how to make like various workflows and things like that. So I actually started anything that I would like do over and over again. I actually programmed in.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's an enormous time saver.
Definitely. Yeah.
He was really annoying about it. He's like, you should be doing this. And I'm like, who are you to tell me what to do? But he was right, so.
Yeah, I had the same thing. My boss showed me how to set up like actions in Photoshop so that I could.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so that I could like just program it to various keys so that I could just like select, fill, like that kind of thing. Made my life so much easier. And I'm sure that like with these little flash animations that I'm doing, that there's probably like ways that I could be optimizing it, but oh well. I'm just going to do the slow way now.
Someday. You need someone standing behind you being annoying to be like, you should do this like this.
Yeah, yeah. Don't you know it's easy to do it like this? And you're like, right.
Fine, make my life better, see if I care.
Yeah.
Now I'm just like grinding away. I'm drawing individual leaves of grass to justify my existence. What am I for if not to draw individual leaves of grass?
It's about the it's more about the action than the final product, right? It's all
Don't
about
tell anyone.
The journey, not the destination.
I sort of had this idea that like individual, like having just a little bit of actual like grass drawn in the foreground would like that kind of texture would make it all look better.
Yeah.
And then what I do with these is I scan them and I send them to the backer who requested them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wait a year, and if I like it, if I think it was a good idea, I will sell prints of it.
Oh, cool.
So a lot of my prints are actually, other people's ideas. Like, would I have thought to put this character in a kilt?
Right.
Shirtless?
Yeah, playing bagpipes.
Playing bagpipes. I was trying to figure out when I was like, can I get a reference photo of a person shirtless playing bagpipes?
Was it
and
difficult?
I found two reference photos, and one of them, the guy looks amazingly hot, and I thought, but is he really playing the bagpipes? Like, is he holding this wrong?
Yeah. Is this just porn?
Someone's gonna know. I can call that one done. Yay!
Yay, you did it!
Going back to this guy.
I think I'm going to be finished soon too. I'm just putting the colours in.
It looks really cute. I can sort of see over on
Yeah,
I've got it, my computer screen. I've got it up so every now and then I can look over there and see what's happening.
See Manfried slowly going, hey!
He's so cute, that Manfried.
He's just a cute little man.
I love how you've taken this bald, fat, hairy dude and made him look so adorable.
It's a skill.
I mean, not that I don't have a fondness for bald, fat, hairy dudes, but it's just like, he's got this sort of schlub quality to him, but he just looks so good.
It's kind of the same like with cats in general. It's like the ones that are like fat and kind of ugly all somehow end up being the cutest ones. I had to file my taxes today because I'm going back to Australia soon, and I had to sort of get it out of the way before I go on my trip.
Right.
And Matt and I were like sort of waiting in the accountant's office, and he had this magazine that was, I think it was a Nat Geo magazine, but it was all about like pets. And I was like, okay, Matt, I'm going to read you this caption and then I'm going to show you the picture. And the caption was, Lilliput, the dwarf cat, has the Guinness World Record for shortest legs. And the picture was this cat with these tiny little nub legs.
Oh my god.
It was so cute.
I'm sure it looked like you can't even imagine how it could walk on those.
Yeah, I have no idea how that poor cat walked. Its legs were so tiny. Just like tiny little nubs. What a great cat.
It's funny how some people get a weird looking cat and then they're like, I'm gonna make my cat internet famous.
Yeah. I wonder now if I ever did get another cat, if I would like make an Instagram account for it. I probably would. But then I'd get upset because it would probably get more likes than like anything else that I ever do.
I really like pictures of people, and every now and then someone will follow me on Instagram and I'll be like, oh, who is this person? And I'll be like, dog picture, or like cat, and it's like, I'm glad you love your pet, but I want to see, I like seeing people, I
Right.
like to see the actual person who, there are people who feel really embarrassed about posting selfies.
Right.
I do not.
I always find it a little bit like I find it a little bit voyeuristic, just like personally myself, if I'm following someone on Instagram that I don't know in real life and they post a lot of pictures of themselves, because I'm like, it's almost like looking at somebody's like photo album and you're like, I don't know this person. It feels a little bit weird that I'm just looking at pictures of them on their like vacation or something like that.
Yeah, especially when it's like, it's one thing if it's like, here's a photo of me looking cute, but when it's like, here's my sister and my cousin,
right?
And
yeah.
this was the best man at my wedding, and here we all are bowling.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, you're looking so cute.
That's why
I have made friends through Instagram though, which seems crazy.
That's really cool. I actually am kind of an old person when it comes to Instagram. I didn't even know that you could do the stories where it had those crazy camera moves, and like Matt posts stuff to Instagram all the time. We were down at Niagara last weekend and he was showing me how to use Instagram stories, and I was like, I didn't know it could do that. I was very impressed.
I mean, it is relatively new.
Yeah.
That part.
And like, cause I'd seen those kind of videos before where the camera does like a zoom in and zoom out or something like that, and I always just thought that like somebody was really, really good at using their phone camera. I was like, man, that person can really get the zoom going on their phone camera really well. But no, it was just Instagram.
You know, what's funny is that they did that, I think, really to compete with Snapchat.
Right.
And Snapchat has a lot of those. And then Facebook Messenger implemented some similar things because they wanted to compete with Snapchat. So now everybody's got these, but then they can also cross-post them. They can be like, we're going to show this little thing on Instagram and on Facebook, and I'm going to add it to my story on Snapchat or whatever. Like, and then you don't know where anything comes from.
The internet is.
So I like, I see people are using this, and I'm sure it's some kind of filter. I just don't know where the filter is, and I don't care enough to look for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a really hard time posting stuff to social media, which is a problem when you like have a webcomic that you're supposed to be promoting. Because it's just to me it's just so tiring. It like takes a lot of mental energy to like have to put together a social media post. I'm really bad.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone.
Well, and like, to some extent, you get people interested in your stuff by like giving them a piece of yourself and saying, "This is who I am, and this is what I do, and this is what I like, and this is how I feel about X, Y, and Z," and that's, you know, that's the bargain that we've struck as members of the comics community.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm going through something really terrible, like comics Twitter. There are a lot of people who are like, hey, listen, I have depression and anxiety, or I have this particular problem that I'm going through, and I just want to talk about it so there's less stigma, and maybe it'll help someone out to know that someone's doing it and going through this. And I think that that's great, but then every time I'm going through something like traumatic, either like deeply traumatic or just like something that happened suddenly, it's like, I don't ever want to talk about this with strangers. Like, hey, something really terrible is happening to me, and I just feel like maybe you'd like to know.
Yeah, I feel like that I've never really been able to share a lot of my genuine self on social media, especially like text-based social media like Twitter or Facebook. It's like, it always just seems like so much extra effort and mental energy to share something personal about yourself. But I get that for some people it's kind of therapeutic and that's how they communicate. But even in like the early days of the internet, I could never really like find the energy to post a lot of personal stuff online. And so I guess I kind of missed out on that kind of online friendship that people formed through things like LiveJournal and DeviantArt, where they would be like posting personal stuff about themselves, not like personal information, but just like they'd be posting comics or blogs or whatever where they talked about their lives, and then people would respond to that, and then these friendships would sort of grow organically out of that. But like, it was always just, to me, it was always just like, I don't think that I'm interesting enough. I don't feel like sharing stuff about myself with strangers. Like, maybe I'm just too introverted or something like that. So, and
I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing now with Twitter and Facebook, where I'll retweet a picture of a cat, but I'm not going to be like going to Twitter and telling them like my kind of personal feelings about things.
On the occasions that I have sort of done that, where I've been like, okay, I'm going to tell people about this difficult thing that I'm going through. I mean, you know, for example, you know, losing Eric felt like something that I needed to do a little bit publicly.
Right.
For whatever reason. And, you know, when you do that, people do come forward and say, you know, thank you for talking about it, because I went through something similar, and it was nice to see someone else just talking about it. right, and then that makes you feel like doing it again. Um, but at the same time, the other thing that happens is sometimes you're looking for a job.
Yeah.
And I mean also when you, I think I actually made a Twitter joke about this once, about how you make these Twitter jokes about yourself as like a complete mess.
Mm-hmm. And then
Like,
yeah, your
look
future
who,
employer.
right? Like, I swear I am competent. This is just my brand. If you bring me into your office, I will be amazing. My Twitter will be about how I can't put my pants on, but
But that's not going to affect my my performance in the workplace. Pants or not, I'm a very good worker.
you'll find me to be excellent, regardless of my pants proclivities.
Yeah, I guess to me, like, it's not really an outlet. To me, it's just like more work. I like browsing social media and I like reading what other people have I guess I'm like what you would call a lurker. I like to lurk, but I don't like to post a lot.
I used to make a lot of jokes, and I wanted to be. I mean, I'm still trying to, and I still do it from time to time. But I wanted to be like some of these people who are very funny on Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
very funny Twitter presences. I wanted to be like. I wanted to be someone who got retweeted for saying something really funny. I would get retweeted for saying things that were pithy.
Yeah.
At some point I was like, I mean, my funny stuff sometimes gets retweeted, but when like I said something about how, I think it was the Olivia books, and I said to my sister that they were great books and maybe we should get them for one of her friend's son was having a birthday, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I love these books. I usually get them for people who have girls." And I thought, like, it's not enough. And I said something like, "It's not enough to teach." On Twitter, I said, "It's not enough to teach girls that they can be protagonists in their own story. We also have to teach boys
Mm-hmm.
that girls can be protagonists in their own stories."
Right.
We have to teach, like there's this thing about how I feel like straight white men, there's so much that's catered directly to them that when something is not, they just, not in any kind of malicious way, they just go, "Oh, well, this isn't for me. This wasn't created for me." So
Right. They have no experience with having to relate to something that's not about them.
exactly.
Yeah. Whereas, yeah, like being a girl or being, a person of color or queer or anything like that, it's like you're constantly having to relate to characters and situations that don't really reflect you.
Right, exactly.
So you
and
maybe have a little
and you get good at it, and you
Yeah.
get so yeah, so that was my, so I think that is one of my most popular tweets ever.
Well, that's a good one to be popular.
Yeah.
Instead of like, I couldn't get my pants on this morning.
Okay, that's a very good point. That's a very good point.
If you have to be Twitter famous for anything.
It should not be for incompetence at being an adult.
How are you going? You getting through it?
I'm good. Yeah. I mean, I can stop at any time, like this is going to have to dry out before I can get, like I think I shouldn't probably try to do the beard until the skin dries out.
Right. I'm very close to finishing this. I guess it's been an hour and a half now. I have a freelance job that I am supposed to be working on as well. I have
Oh,
this...
Kelly says hi. I just looked up Hi, Kelly. You may have said that an hour ago. Okay, anyway. Kelly Phillips. So you have a freelance job?
Yeah, I used to work as a medical illustrator, as you know, back in Australia. And I have this one client who is a doctor. He's a urogynecologist, and every now and then he'll contact me out of the blue and be like, "Hey, do you want to do like some animation or do some drawings?" Like I don't know. I think he gives conferences and he likes to have these little videos to sort of illustrate his talks. And I always say yes to him because he pays really well and his stuff's really interesting. So I'm doing a series of videos right now about female pelvic floor, which is very interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah. I like it, but also like I'm kind of behind on it and I need to finish it.
When you said urogynecologist, I thought you meant like Euro, like European. Like, I was like, is that a special category?
No, it's just like a little tiny slice of my old life that every now and then sort of comes back, and I'm always kind of delighted to do that kind of work because I find it really fascinating.
Mm-hmm. That sounds fun.
Yeah, I learned a lot about
nice too.
About the female bladder and prolapses and whatnot. It's all very interesting.
That's great. Do you ever feel like you have too much information? Like now you can know all these things that can go wrong, and
100%, yeah. Yeah, I was saying to somebody, I was like, it's like a reminder of like the grim future of my vagina. Like
here's what's gonna happen.
One day the sensation is going to deplete. And no, I worked on this one. It was like a e-learning course that was all about colonoscopies. So that one was very TMI. I learned a lot about how colonoscopies work.
I was on a business trip to New York once a while ago, and I was staying in Times Square. And if you've been to Times Square, there's a Jumbotron, like a massive TV screen.
Mm-hmm.
And Good Morning America was on, and Al Roker was getting a colonoscopy on TV to encourage people to get colonoscopies.
Oh my God.
And I looked up, I'm like, it's first thing in the morning, and I'm walking through Times Square to get to the train to get down to the office, and there's the inside of Al Roker's colon, and it's like 20 feet tall, 40 feet wide.
That's not something you want to see first thing in the morning.
It's not. I don't think there's ever a time when I want to see anyone's colon that large.
What hath man wrought?
That was like not the use case for the Jumbotron.
Alright, I think I'm done. That was my last little bit.
Yay!
Let's see how this looks. Hey! Oh. I'm not quite done yet. Almost done.
I am almost at a good stopping place. Painting plaid is never that fun.
No.
So, nice to get that out of the way.
Looks cute though.
Thank you.
Colors look good.
This request was sexy lumberjack.
That's a good request. Somebody's got good taste.
it was space cowboy or sexy lumberjack, and I was like, lumberjack's easy. Let me try the space cowboy. And I have all these sketches in my sketchbook of like me trying to draw a space cowboy, and then I was just like, I don't know what that means, and I can't do it.
Sexy lumberjack it is.
And And there's my guy in a kilt.
Cute. Love it.
Yeah, I'm happy about that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think I'm ready to call it a night. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, Tony.
Thank you, and thank you for everyone who tuned in.
Yeah, thanks for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed watching us work and have a casual conversation. It's now like snowing again outside in Toronto, so I'm super glad to be like inside nice and cozy and warm tonight.
It's supposed to be really cold in Chicago tomorrow.
Yeah, we have like another extreme weather warning for tomorrow.
I'm over it. Give me summer.
Yeah, at least this new place that we moved into is like properly insulated and it's nice and warm. The last place that we lived had it was very drafty and it was very cold. So it's so nice to be like kind of snug and warm and like looking out on this cold weather.
Yeah.
Gonna get a cup of tea, sit by the window.
Give Matt a hug for me.
I certainly will. And are you going to come up for TCAF?
I am not exhibiting, and I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to swing in for a quick weekend trip. Like, I kind of want to see everyone, but also I kind of need to do less stuff.
I know, yeah. It's
very I'm really exhausting myself.
Yeah. Anyway, hopefully I will see you then, but otherwise, all the best. Maybe we can do another live stream again in the future just to catch up.
That would be fun.
Yeah. This was really good. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. Bye.
Talk to you later. Bye. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and I will see if I can organize another live stream for next week. I might be too busy with freelance work, but anyway, keep an eye on the Manfried Twitter account, and I'll let you know. Have a good night, everyone. Bye.